Hey guys, so I have to be a little quiet because my kids are still sleeping, but I took a look at the graphs that people at home had made on Monday, and it was actually really cool to see. It looks like people are pretty good about like the data table, kind of having your independent variable, your trials, your average, and your standard deviation. And then just a hint here, right? You can just type in standard deviation, and you can use either that one or this S, and you want to just take your two trials, and you can see, um, and then you probably want to, so even for the average rates here, you can adjust your, so if this is your standard deviation, like that tenths place, this will also depend on, we'll talk a little bit at some point about the uncertainty in these measurements, which ideally you're going to get these from log or pro. That graph, or the slope of the line, is going to be your rate of your reaction. So we're going to end up adjusting both of these. But I think for standard deviation, you usually want it to be set at sort of your lowest. But yeah, so we'll go back to this. It will honestly depend on what that number is from log or pro. But to make the graph so that you can put on the standard deviation as the error bar, and this honestly takes a bit of practice. So I forget exactly who, actually I do know who worked on this one, but so this idea, right, you have to, if you're going to make the graph in Google Sheets, which honestly isn't that hard if you have 5 data points, you have to make this array. Although the array, instead of being the standard deviation, is going to be your average. So I sort of took this graph and made a copy of it, or this kind of whole setup, the tables, the graphs, and we did this kind of two-step thing for that simulation. For the enzyme lab, the way that you're going to get the rates is that slope from the graph. So you probably don't even need this top one here. So what I did was I made a copy of this tab, and so yeah, this data table, the second one, I think is the only one that you need. So you've got your independent variable, those values. You have, probably we're going to have 2 trials, and we're going to end up doing something probably a little bit different. But let's keep our standard deviation here. So then what I've done, so I just, instead of selecting the standard deviation, I selected the average. So you can see that this is that first average, this is that second average, and then this is that third average. So then what I was in the process of doing was just adding a series for every one of these columns. And you can see that they're going to come out as a different color, but they're the same point as the original one. So let me kind of show you just this last step of going through and doing this. So I'm on setup and I'm going through, and what I'm doing is just adding the series. And did I add all of them? Yes. Okay, so I've added these 5 data points. And then when I get rid of this first one, you're going to see that those are the 5 points that I have left. And when I want to go and add the error bars, actually it looks like there's one left. That's weird. Well, let's look here. So I'm going to customize, and then I'm going to go to series. So I'm just going to make them all the same color. So I'm just going to make them all black. And so then I'm going to do data series 2. So this is how you can create that graph with different error bars for every point, because we're going to see that we will get different levels of variation for each one. All right, so now they sort of all look the same. I'm going to try to take out that legend because I don't really need that. Just say none. And here's where I'm going to go through and do the error bars. I think they're on here too. All right, so I'm on data series 5, so that's my 5th point. And I'm going to do error bar. And instead of percent, I'm going to do, I want to put in the value. Oh, that's annoying. Oh, okay, I get it. Okay, so instead of 10, it's not 10, right? So I'm going to look at this value here. I'm going to put 0.046. And actually, here's where you might, just for the sake of, but yeah, 3, if this is our average, let's just keep this to 3 data points, or 3 decimal places. And so let's just go through and add. And so to kind of make sure that these are turning out right, so we say, okay, data 0.4, error bar, constant. And so this probably will be the annoying part of the lab, is needing to type in all of these separately. If you do this in Excel or OpenOffice, you don't have to do this step. You just make your graph, you right click, add your error bars, it will put in a different one for each one. But I'm gonna just make sure that these are right. So actually, I'm not gonna add all these now because they're literally gonna be different for the data that we have. But hopefully this is making sense a little bit. If you want to create this in Google Sheets, this is how you'll have to do this. You'll have to add a different error bar for everyone. But you can see that, right, this middle one, and I just made up these values, is the one with the highest standard deviation at this point. So just to see, but this, yeah, the graph otherwise looks really good. We'll see, I think this will end up being kilopascals per second, but it honestly depends on what people are selecting as the X value of their graph in Logger Pro. So let's see how this goes today. But this is what those graphs will end up looking like, and we probably will have to sort of redo the standard deviation for 2 data points. So we'll probably end up having this be the top value and the bottom being the bottom value. So they won't necessarily, but let's see how far we get today. And probably what I'll do is collect some data so that we can see what this would look like if we had the time to get 3 repeats.